This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to The Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing A Dozen Roses by Braid, featuring my guest, Damon Atkinson, on drums. Formed in 1993 in Champaign, Illinois, Braid combined complex, angular musical compositions with heart-on-sleeve lyrics. Their inexhaustible work ethic and non-stop touring won them a rabid fan base, especially in their native Midwest. Damon anchored the band with cleverly conceived, crisply executed beats, his unique style proving incredibly influential on indie and mainstream acts alike. Braid disbanded in 1998, but Damon and some of his bandmates continued in another acclaimed group, Hey Mercedes. Damon also built on the skill set he first developed in the DIY rock scene and cultivated a career in music business. I spoke to him at his home in Nashville, where he works as a live event producer and has also recently become a restaurateur as co-owner of Nicoletto's Italian Kitchen. And now our conversation with Damon Atkinson.
Prior to moving here, I had spent some time, like 2 years, on the Warped Tour. Kevin Lyman's.
In what capacity?
I was production office manager, which I could do that during the summer, but then I could still tour manage and or play drums in other bands during the rest of the year. But 2010, there was an opportunity for me to become full-time. Kevin had asked me to join the team as operations manager for his company. And that would have either required me to move, had I taken the job, which I did, but it would either require me to move to LA or Nashville, because he had just started an office in Nashville, because he was trying his luck with a country music festival tour, like a Warped Tour but country. So that's why he'd opened an office here, and it was a very quick answer, and I said, I'll go to Nashville.
What is it about Nashville that appealed to you?
Well, I think it's funny too, because there was a point where I thought I could live in LA. I mean, that would be cool.
Yeah,
it's always nice weather, and I don't know, but I think at the time, probably the money.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, the expenses out there wasn't appealing, and I knew. The other reason is because I had two really good friends that lived in Chicago, and we were essentially neighbors. We all lived within walking distance of each other, and we hung out quite a bit in Chicago. And they worked for Kevin as well. And Kevin is the one, he moved these two from Chicago. He moved them down to Nashville to open his office. And I was sad to see him leave Chicago, because we were best buds. And I was happy for him. I understood it, but I was bummed. And then when that opportunity came up, that was the other main reason why I chose Nashville as opposed to LA.
Let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
You started in Milwaukee. You grew up in Milwaukee.
Yes.
What was your family like growing up? I've met your brother a few times, Eric.
Yeah. You've met my mom too.
I've met your mom too. But what was your experience like as a kid? Were you a happy kid?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the only times I probably wasn't happy is when I was much younger, and the only thing I wanted to do was to hang out with my older brother and his older friends. And they were, my brother, God bless him, he was always trying to stick up for me. But there was a point, I think there was a line that had to be drawn where he had to,
do his own thing for a while.
He had to do his own thing, and I think his friends didn't really want the little guy around. But I thought it was kind of cool. Maybe not.
Well, you were a bit precocious, were you not?
Yes. I was, and I was, I think, adventurous, and I think when seeing my brother's older friends do certain things with illegal substances, I thought, well, that looks fun.
So you got into drugs when you were really young?
Oh, yeah.
How old were you?
12.
What were you doing? Smoking weed?
Yeah. I mean, that was...
Taking acid?
Not
until you hit 13.
not until I grew up, Joe.
Okay.
I would... God, I mean, high school, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, high school. But, yeah...
How much a part of your routine was that at that point?
I did it on a regular enough basis to where there became a point when I was 18, which I think for most people shouldn't really have that experience of drugs and alcohol and what have you until after 18. But once I hit 18, something happened where I felt like every time we had band practice, it was just a get high and get drunk fest, right? So very non-productive, where I was the only one. I felt like I was the only one, and maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like I was the only one who wanted to be productive and write songs and concentrate on booking shows and promoting those shows and recording records or 7 inches or tapes or whatever. But it was always, our rehearsals were always consumed with, let's get drunk first and then let's try to write music.
We're talking about the band Figurehead.
That was one of them, yeah. And there was some other prior versions of that. One, oddly enough, well, I think Altered State was one of them.
So Altered State, that was a band where everybody wanted to get drunk and do drugs?
That's where it started. Yeah, oddly enough, go figure, by the name. Yeah, but I think by the time Figurehead, once we had kind of come up with that, I think for the most part we had sort of started getting away from that. But yeah, that was a bit of it. But by the time I turned 18, I said I just don't want to do it. I don't want to drink. I don't want to smoke weed. I don't want to smoke cigarettes. I don't want to, I just want to play music, and I want to focus on that. And I did that for a long time.
How did you get into music in the beginning?
I got into music at a very early age because my mom was friends with local bands. Yeah, she just and they used to rehearse at her house. They used to rehearse at her basement. And so it's funny to think I think a lot of people get asked this question about what are your earliest memories of this or that or whatever it is. And a lot of people have a hard time thinking of what that first memory was at such an early age. Mine was probably 2 or 3 years old, and I remember walking down the stairs to my basement and seeing a drum set. And there's other equipment there, but I remember seeing the drum set, and then I remember being sat on the stool behind the drum set. I don't know if someone was just joking around or thought it'd be funny, but that one moment changed my life forever. Because I knew that's what I wanted to do. That was it. I
wanted
wanted
it
to
all
play
figured
drums.
out at age 2.
I mean, I thought so. And I thought so for so long, until my uncles, recommended that I find a backup plan because they saw me with this vision of being a rock star. That's all I wanted. That's all I talked about. It's I used to play with Legos and build these elaborate stage sets.
Right.
And drew in all my notebooks, and that's all I wanted.
So your uncles were kind of mentors for you?
They were, yeah. They both played music. They were both in bands as well.
Was your dad around?
No, he wasn't. He was no. I mean, we would go visit him when we were younger, and he played guitar. I do remember that, but he wasn't around, and he was definitely not as influential as my uncles or my uncle's friends or my mom's friends who were there all the time.
Right. And your uncles saw that you were dreaming big, and they were like, "Hey, kid, maybe take it down a notch."
Right, and perhaps it was based on personal experiences of their own.
Right.
But
they'd had similar aspirations, and they were crushed.
Yeah, maybe, perhaps, and yeah, I think there was I don't know what it was, but it's funny at the time when they would tell me this, they would say, not everyone makes it big. Not everyone becomes a rock star. So you better think of something else that you can fall back on. And I seriously took that as I was offended.
Right.
Like, how dare you? You obviously have no faith in me. You think I'm going to fail. That's how I took it. So initially I was pissed off about it. But then I don't know what happened or what hit me. I don't remember that moment in my life, but something hit me where I thought, well, okay. But here's what I think it was. I think the way I took it was they were insistent that I become do something else other than music.
Like what?
Well, I don't know. They weren't specific about it, but the way I took it was maybe they meant I should be a doctor or a lawyer or anything but a musician or anything but someone who's in the music business.
Do you ever wish you would have taken their advice?
But I did.
Ah, okay. So what did you do?
Well, I did.
You're a doctor?
No. Yeah, I am. No, I did take their advice, and that's what ended up allowing me to do the things I'm doing now, which I enjoy. I'm happy about. It helps me afford things in life. But what I took of that was, I don't have to become a doctor or a lawyer. I can become a manager or a tour manager or whatever. And here's the thing. At the time, I really didn't know anything about the behind the scenes stuff.
Right, but you had an aptitude for it early on, did you not?
Yeah, I did. I mean, all my bands early on, I did, I booked a lot of the shows. I made a lot of the flyers. I found the place to get, tape duplication.
Yeah, ironically, the whole DIY scene was a great breeding ground for becoming a manager.
Yeah.
Outside of the DIY scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
How old were you when you first started getting into that stuff?
I mean,
13?
Well, the first show I ever played, and I say show loosely, it was, a friend's, backyard.
Basement? Okay.
Well, it wasn't even a basement. I mean, it was so elevated. It was so much bigger. It was his back porch.
Okay.
Back patio. So it was an outdoor gig, sort of a small amphitheater in his backyard. But I was 11 years old. Mm-hmm. So that was my first band. I was 11 years old. And so I didn't know how everything was supposed to be done, but I knew that something had to be done.
Do you still have a vivid memory of playing that show?
Oh, 100%.
Like, do you remember, did you have goosebumps?
Yeah.
Were you super excited?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had a hard time recreating that feeling as an adult?
No.
You get it every time?
In all honesty, not every time. But there have been moments where, whether it was, oh my God, I can't believe we're playing here. Probably the first time I played CBGB's.
Right.
Or, holy crap, there's a lot of people out there. Probably the first time I played an arena show.
Right.
And so those moments have been recreated without me really knowing about it or thinking about it. But, I mean, that's just one of those, you'll never forget your first show. I won't forget my second show. I remember being at home and getting a call saying some, cheerleading people and basketball people in a town, not that anyone listening would know of this town, but in Port Washington, where, I lived in Grafton. So that's, that's like going on tour, That's like, you got to travel for that.
We're talking about the northern suburbs of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big. But I remember getting that call and be like, yeah, of course, gotta go. And it was a party. It was like a party for a basketball team after a basketball game. But someone wanted us to play, and I thought, well, how cool is that?
How old were you when you had your son?
19.
19.
Yeah.
So you were clean and sober, and now it's time to become a father.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Hello, wake up.
Yeah. How did that affect you? Were you ready to accept that responsibility right away?
Yes and no. I mean, mentally, yes. Well, partially mentally, yes. But I mean, I don't think I clearly understood what being a father should be. And I don't know if that's...
In retrospect, what does that mean to you?
Well...
What is a father supposed to be?
Responsibility.
Yeah.
And being there for your child for everything. And believe me, at first, I was. Because I felt that that's what I wanted to do. And, his mom and I were still together, but, a year after he was born, we split up, but it was a mutual split, and we made a pact to be civil, and, we have to try to be as responsible as possible for him. And so, I think I did everything that a 19-year-old could have possibly done to be a responsible father. But then it was like, well, I have an opportunity to go on the road. So that's what I do.
Right.
And it's like, I felt like for years, and not with him or not with his mom necessarily, but with other people, sort of had to defend myself for doing what I was doing. And a lot of people could easily pass judgment and say, well, you're just going on tour and you're only in a band to escape your responsibilities. It's like, no, I'm actually not. This is all I've ever wanted to do my entire life. And I'm trying to make a living, and I'm trying to support my child. And I think he would want, and later on in life, as he got older and we can have conversations, and we can talk about real life things. And we've been able to do that for most of his life.
Well, he's what, 20 now?
Yeah, he's 20.
So he's older than you were when you had him.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is probably trippy.
Yeah, I mean, it in a way, yeah, but it's like, to me, it's normal.
Right.
He's been a part of my life for 20 years.
Right.
Which is...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons I started doing this show is because I was thinking about having kids, and I just wanted to talk to other musicians who had done it. And so, of course, the first guy that I interviewed was Brendan Canty, who has 4 kids.
Yeah, incredible.
But, what I've learned is that, being a touring musician and being a parent are not mutually exclusive by any means.
No.
And if that's what you're driven to do, then you're showing the kid that it's possible to do what you want to do and to create a career for yourself.
Of course.
So what is he doing now?
He's aspiring to be a chef.
Cool.
Which is awesome. Because if there's ask anyone who knows me, even ask my mom, my brother, they would tell you that if there was any other profession that I would be interested in doing, it would be in the culinary arts. I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've always had I've always loved to cook, loved to, plate food. I mean, when I was a teenager, I would, even if I cooked a freaking grilled cheese sandwich, I would try to make it look nice.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can do with a grilled cheese, but
now there's restaurants dedicated to grilled cheese sandwiches,
which is kind of incredible. And I maybe I missed my calling there. No, I'm happy where I'm at.
Not letting it look great. I'm playing one paper on the 50 and playing the champagne. To tell you the truth, if I had a chance to kill it, I'd pick it up and take it and shake it and kiss it to death. There's something inside like you can't just decide. You've been foolish, letting bows down the name of the stars. Get up and go do what you started. If you wanna be a fighter, try harder, go!
The band that you're probably most closely identified with at this point is Braid, would you say?
Yeah, I would think so.
How did you end up playing with Braid?
We had played a show or two with Braid randomly, and then we stayed at one of their houses, Chris. Mm-hmm. We stayed at their house, and then shortly after that, we had decided that we were going to call it quits. Figurehead was done. for what I don't even remember the fucking reason. Probably none whatsoever. But we decided to call quits. And we thought, let's have a couple last shows in the Milwaukee area. And we were trying to think of what bands that we wanted to have play with us, because we thought, well, if we're going out, I mean, this is kind of like when people are asked the question, what will your last meal be?
Right.
So, which is funny, I've never used that analogy until now. I don't know where that came from, but it makes sense.
Pull it out of people, man.
Yeah, it's great. You do. You have that magic. But no, but that's kind of how we treated it. We're like, all right, last meal, last hurrah. Who do we have play? And one of the first bands we thought of was Braid. We thought, how cool, because they're great. We played with them once before in Illinois. We bought their CD. We haven't stopped listening to it, and that was Frankie Welfare Boy, age 5. And so we asked them to play, and they said yes. We were actually surprised, but they said yes. And so fast forward about a month after those shows, Braid is playing a show somewhere in Illinois, college show, surprisingly. And I think it's either on the way there or on the way back. Their drummer at the time, Roy, broke the news to the guys that he would no longer be able to play in the band. He couldn't tour. He just couldn't do it. He had to focus on work, and he was going to be starting a family and what have you. And so the band had been working on and sort of had a small tour plan, like a 2-3 week tour. So they're given this news, and they have to figure out what to do. They called me. They came up with a list of drummers who they thought could fill that role, and they thought of me because they knew that I was recently
single.
I was a free agent because they had just played my band's last shows, and I think hanging out with them during those shows, they knew that I had nothing on the horizon. So I get a call from Bob Nana, the singer, and says, Roy can't do it. We have a tour. It starts in 5 days or something crazy, like ridiculous, would you be interested? And I was like, I mean, that's a no-brainer, of course.
Do you ever think about that, like how things kind of fall into place?
Yeah,
in a seemingly unrandom way.
I do, and my mom has.
What do you make of it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, my mom has helped me realize that as well, because throughout the years when I've told her about jobs that I have, whether it's working for Warped Tour or I was a day-to-day manager for a country artist randomly, and I'm a production manager for a music festival now, and just all these things. And she told me, and I hadn't realized it, and I don't say this to brag about it, but it very much so ties into what you just asked. But she had reminded me that she asked me a question. She said, when was the last time you applied for a job? I said, well, that would have been, I think it was 2005 when I lived in Memphis, and Hey Mercedes, which we haven't touched on yet, but we had just broken up, and we had already done a Braid reunion tour, oddly enough. I know I'm kind of skipping over timelines, but so I was in this weird kind of thing where I was trying to find a touring gig, but it wasn't there. So I found, and I applied for a temp job. I worked for a temp agency, but that was the last time. So that was a decade ago, But she's like, think about all the other jobs that you've had, whether it's tour managing or operations manager, Warped Tour, management, whatever. Did you ever apply for any job? And I said, no.
Why do you think that is?
Well,
what is it about you that attracts opportunity?
Well, you put me in a weird position to talk about myself in that way, because...
No, but do you have a particular attitude, do you think, that opens your life up to opportunities?
Well, I think I'm excited about things. I think I've put myself out there, whether, I think the whole connection with the Warped Tour and Kevin Lyman is I was drum teching for a band. This was shortly after my temp job in Memphis. I still lived in Memphis. I put the feelers out there initially to find a band that was looking for a drummer. But instead I found I found a band looking for a drum tech. And I was presented with that as an option. And when I found out that I would be going on tour again, and I would be paid to set up someone's drums, and the pay was more than what the temp job gave.
It was also probably more than you made playing drums in other bands.
Yeah, 100%. Right, exactly. So it was an easy yes.
You didn't have reservations like, oh, I should be the one playing drums in this band. I should be the one making money.
No, because I wasn't playing drums.
Right.
That wasn't my role. So it wasn't.
But you didn't feel jealous at all?
No.
No.
I didn't. And people ask me that. They're like, before I started that tour, and I was telling people I was doing that job, they're like, aren't you afraid that at some point on the tour, you're going to be sitting there on the side of the stage, watching this drummer, making sure that his stick doesn't fall out of his hand or his cymbal stand doesn't start, falling over? You're not going to wish that was you up on stage playing drums. I said, no. It's just a different thing. I don't see it that way.
Right. I think it's all about expectations, right? I mean, if you are going out with the expectation of playing, that's one thing. If you're getting paid to perform a different duty, then maybe you can embrace that in a different way.
Right. And if I had such a hard time working for another drummer who was playing on stage as opposed to me, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
I don't think I would have allowed myself to go out there and said, well, it might be tough, but I'll give it a shot.
Okay, so at this point in your life, are you even 40 yet? 39?
39.
You're 39 years
Currently.
old. You have an adult kid, so that's all out of the way.
Sure.
Not that he still doesn't need you, but...
Right.
Okay, he's a grown adult.
Yeah.
You have a balance between tour managing and production, and then you can go out on the road with your own bands.
Yeah.
And your fans have stayed with you, even though you've taken hiatuses, and you've won over new fans. So you have a good balance going. What are your goals for the future?
I think, oddly enough, and I don't want it to sound like this is the easy way out, but I kind of want to keep doing the same thing in a way. I mean, I think there's, with me and with someone who's been in different bands and someone who's worked so many different jobs, different bands I've tour managed for, different bands I've teched for, Warped Tour and a management company, and just so many different things. I think there's a part of me that, oddly enough, as much as I feel like I want something solid and like regular in a way, but there's something I haven't quite pinpointed and nailed down yet, and maybe that's my next adventure. But there's something about me that I feel keeps moving around.
As you mentioned before, for the last decade, one thing has led to another.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of those opportunities are totally unexpected, but then they make perfect sense in retrospect.
Yeah.
So maybe things will keep progressing in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that, listen, I've said it before. In as much as I actually do enjoy the managerial side of things, whether I'm a production manager, a tour manager, a day-to-day manager, or what have you. I don't know what it is about the whole managerial aspect, but I think it's like I feel like I've got the understanding on what it takes to put something together and manage people's expectations. Maybe that's it. But through all of that, I love it. I enjoy it. I'll do it for the rest of my life. Ultimately, if someone were to ask me, what do you really want to do? The answer is always, I want to play drums. And I'm not saying this because I'm on talking with you, But I've said that, I've had the conversation with my girlfriend before, and not that long ago, about, I wonder if maybe I'm at a point now where I need to get out there and maybe put myself out there as someone who's looking to play drums. And I get to do that in Braid. We still make records, write music, and play shows, but maybe instead of being a production manager or a tour manager to pay my bills and what have you,
You could be a touring drummer.
be a touring drummer. Maybe that's it.
And I think that's a good place to end it. Damon
Perfect.
Atkinson, thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.